Yeah, because imagine we're supposed to drink 12 to 15 glasses of water a day. Imagine if each person will drink, let's say, even 5 bottles of water. Where do those bottles of water go unless we recycle them? It goes to the sea, goes to MRFs, goes to, that's too much. MRF, Material Recovery Facility. That's under my law, RA 9003. Okay. Wag na kayo mag-bottled water sa tatlong, ayan siya, I mean, and in fact, let's put it in the GAA. Yeah, if you notice, the GAA has 50 special, no, you're laughing. You may not know that I inserted 50 special provisions on environment and climate. When Attorney Doblon first read my special provisions, when I assumed the chairmanship 3 years ago of finance, they thought I was kind of strange and funny and krung because I put all those climate provisions. But I'm glad that Secretary Dominguez yesterday mentioned about the dwindling fish supply as attributed to climate change. And so I want to educate not just the LBRMO and the Senate, but the whole bureaucracy, the whole government, and the whole country, so that all environmental laws and climate resilience is mainstreamed. And if the economic team will lead in this, this will redound to economic benefits. So back to bottled water. So walang bottled water dito. At ang ating kinakain din ay dapat healthy. Kaya saging na saba, ang ating kinakain. Oo, sinasabi ko yun, saging na saba. At bawal ang single-use plastic bag. Ayan. Okay. We recognize Senator Escudero and Senator Drilon. Did you ask yesterday? Not yet? Nagtanong ka na? Okay. So, sorry about that. Cheese, mauuna si Minority Leader because he was here yesterday. I thought you had asked questions. So, mauuna po si Minority Leader, Senator Drilon, and then Senator Escudero. Then I'll ask my questions later. Ako yata pinakamabait na chair na hindi nagtatanong at lahat sa inyo nauuna kayo. Sige.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and pleasant good morning to everyone. Yeah, I did not know that Secretary Jokno looks much prettier this morning than yesterday. Anyway, yes, as you are all aware, the President signed the Bangsamoro Organic Law. And we assume that it will be effective January 1. For purposes of the budget, let's say January 1 of 2019. Obviously, the budget that you presented today does not take into account the financial implications of the formation of the Bangsamoro government. The first question probably is, does it? I don't want to go on that assumption. Secretary Dominguez is shaking his head, so for the record, the proposed 2019 budget does not include the projected budget for the Bangsamoro. Would Secretary Dominguez want to say something?
We're just checking with the DBM.
Yes. Sige. So can we have a 1 minute recess just to allow them?
Please proceed.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning.
State your name
to
and
the
your designation.
good
Thank you.
senators. I am Yusek Janet Abuel of the DBM. I'm sitting down for the Secretary who is on his way. So, sir, indeed, it is not yet incorporated in the 2019 proposed budget, but we have a proposed budget for the ARMM, which amounts to 32.2 billion, and we can be able to reallocate that considering the computations for the new for the requirements under the BOL.
I do recall, well, the Bangsamoro Organic Law provides for a block grant Secretary Dominguez doesn't look happy with that, it's obvious, but it's already there, so it's a question of implementation. It is 5% of the total taxes, national taxes, both from the collected by the BIR and the Bureau of Customs, 3 years prior. So for 2019, I assume it is the national taxes as of 2016. Is that correct? So how much would the 5% be? I assume we would know that already, Secretary Dominguez.
I'm not certain that we have the final figure, but do
But
you
just, yeah, just a preliminary figure, just so.
Yeah, it's around 60 billion.
6-0.
Yes.
And so the first question is, the 32.2 will be adjusted to 60.
I'm not sure that is possible at this time. We have to check with Secretary Jokno on that.
What do you mean, sir? It's, we have to adjust the budget, so is that, it's not possible to adjust the budget?
No, I'm not sure. We have to ask Ben what he plans to do with it.
Yes, well, Undersecretary Abuel, would you know?
Sir, what we intend to do is to study and try to adjust within the amounts, because we need to reallocate, because what we have now is indeed insufficient to cover the estimated amount of the block grant.
Now, apart from, okay, so let's leave it at that. So you have to, but at least there's 32.2.
7.2 billion
For what?
for retirement of personnel who may be affected by the
Okay.
establishment.
Yeah.
So that excludes teaching and medical allied and
Yeah,
medical positions.
because they will be retained.
Yes.
Those who will be retained will be, so this is not PS, this is retirement.
It's under the pension gratuity fund.
Yes. So is this more or less what we're looking at? Apart, of course, from their share in the national taxes that they collect. Would you recall how much it is? I think it's 75-25 if percent sharing, Secretary Dominguez?
The Mandanas law has just been decided. The Mandanas case has just been decided. We are filing an MR, however, and basically it says that the LGUs are entitled to 40% of all taxes collected by the national government. So that will now include not only taxes collected by the BIR,
But
but
also
also by
by
the
customs.
customs. The fiscal impact of that, we estimate, is 195 billion pesos. We are, however, filing a motion for reconsideration to have more clarity on how the taxes are to be computed, whether or not special taxes are included in that computation, such as taxes on PESA enterprises, and other issues. So we are going to be filing that, I believe, today or tomorrow.
And the 195 billion is your interpretation of what the decision means, or is that just a ballpark figure?
It's a calculation based on what we understand the decision to mean. However, there's a lot of points to be clarified. One point is, when is the start date?
That's correct.
Is it now, so we have to go back to 2016, or is it in 2022?
Okay, anyway, those are
yeah,
matters which
yeah.
you would want to clarify, but
Yeah.
A ballpark figure for 2000, assuming that everything is clarified before the end of the year, are we saying that there is an additional 195 billion burden on the national expenditure program?
Well,
Or is this the gross, so that minus what they presently get as ERA, and the balance is the additional burden?
additional.
Oh.
It is additional. The current ERA is budgeted to be around for 575 billion. So it's
Okay.
supposed to be another 195. Just an estimate.
Yeah.
So we are clarifying really what does the decision really mean? Does it mean the effectivity, the effectivity, the prospectivity starts this year, which means to say that the payment will be 3 years from now, or should it be calculated from the year 2016? So those are questions that we
Yeah.
are going to be asking for clarification for. And there's also another issue here.
Yes.
And that is the issue as to who really has the right to determine the share of the local governments. Is it the Supreme Court or the legislature?
Well, the legislature, okay, if I recall,
Yeah.
the decision, Mr.
Yes.
Secretary, it's their interpretation of the
Yes.
Constitution.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, that's the interpretation of the Constitution. And in effect, they're saying that the interpretation by Congress of the Constitution was erroneous
Yes.
and lacking. That's why with that kind of an interpretation, there is even a danger that the error started in 1991 when the local government code became effective. But I don't think that they're
No,
going
they
to...
made it prospective.
Yeah, they made it perspective, yes.
Yeah, but actually, Secretary Jokno has a long, knows the long history of this, going back to Marcos' time, where the sharing was, I believe, as low as 15%, and it was not automatically given. And how it went through Cory's time, and then subsequent to that. But he says it was always computed on the internal tax collections.
That's for another session, just for purposes of, yes, I yield to my group friend.
With the permission of Manong Frank, one of the main issues of Congressman Mandanas, now Governor Mandanas actually, was the non-inclusion of the internal revenue taxes collected by the Bureau of Customs in their capacity as agent of the BIR. Because they were collecting excise taxes and other forms of taxes that were merely delegated to them. The big chunk of that actually would be coming from that amount.
You're perfectly correct, Mr. Senator.
Just that point, because it's not really an erroneous interpretation made by Congress on what the era should be, but it's that computation. Na sa totoo lang, internal revenue naman talaga siya eh. It just so happens that the Bureau of
Kaya nga.
Customs was collecting it as the collecting agent of the BIR.
That's why the Supreme Court interpreted the Constitution and said in effect that Congress has been in error in interpreting it in the manner that we interpreted it and placed it in the budget. In any case, going back to my original point, my computation is that roughly 260 billion will be added, will have to be inputted because of the Bangsamoro government and the Mandanas decision. Roughly.
Again, we are not sure on the total amount on the Mandanas decision because.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
using 195 cents,
Yes.
just for purposes of discussion.
But you know, there's another way to interpret that and say, okay, we will provide the funds to you and pass also on the expenses that we are carrying on behalf of the local governments, such as farm-to-market roads, hospitals, what do you call it? Yeah, the healthcare, which was already devolved.
Okay. So when would we know? I'm sure our committee would be interested when we put this budget on the floor for debates, and in the period of amendments, the Senate would like to know exactly what kind of adjustments will be made and how will this be sourced.
Okay.
How will
May
this
I?
be sourced?
Before the Secretary answers, first we'll have to wait for the Supreme Court to decide on your MR, no? The Secretary said that an MR has been filed or will be filed.
Will be filed
Yes.
within the week.
Yes.
Yeah.
Second, we have to ascertain, since we're talking in broad estimates and numbers on the impact of the Mandanas decision. For example, how do we compute it? Is it the national internal revenue taxes enumerated? Let me just go through Section 21 of the National Internal Revenue Code as amended, collected by the BIR and Customs, which was mentioned earlier. Second, tariff and customs duties collected by Customs. Third, 50% of the value-added taxes collected in the ARM and 30% of all other national taxes collected in the ARM. The remaining 50% of the collections of value-added taxes and 70% of the collections of the other national taxes in the ARM shall be the exclusive share of the ARM pursuant to Section 9 and Section 15 of RA 9054. 60% of the national taxes collected from the exploitation and development of national wealth. 85% of the excise taxes collected from locally manufactured Virginia and other tobacco products. The remaining 15% shall accrue to the special purpose funds created by RA 7171, the Virginia Tobacco Development, and RA 72227, BCDA law. The entire 50% of the national taxes collected under Sections 106, 108, 116 of the NIRC, under Section 283 of the NIRC. 5% of the 25% franchise taxes given to the national government under Section 6 of RA 6631, the Manila Jockey Club franchise, and Section 8 of RA 6632, Philippine Racing Club franchise. Those are just some enumerated here. I am not certain if this is the basis of the computation of the Supreme Court of the Mandanas petition or the MR of the economic team of the DOF. I am not certain if this is also the basis of the minority leader when he posited the question. So these are just some of the laws that were enacted by Congress that were, based on the Mandanas petition, should be spread or shared with the local governments. And so the figure that we must raise in the committee, assuming that is decided on by the time we finish the budget by end of the year, we have to source it. So whether it's 190, pag-aawayan pa, magne-negotiate pa yung figure which is covered, which is not. Yes. So just to put on record some of that. So yes, the minority leader is correct. This will impact on our proposed national budget for 2019. How much it is, it will depend on how the Supreme Court will interpret the Mandanas petition and your prayer in the motion for reconsideration. Now, how much will the budget increase? Everything will depend on that. Now, the question would be, how will this also affect our budget deficit, targeted at only 3.2% of GDP in 2019? So all of that will be affected. And then lastly, and perhaps the most important, based on whatever amount will come out from the MR, where do we source it? That's the big question. Well, I have some idea. I may not say it now.
Can I have
I have
the
some
floor
idea.
again,
Yes.
sir?
Then we go back to the minority leader and we recognize Secretary Jokno. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for recognizing me once more, Madam Chair. So, you know, yes, Secretary Dominguez, you will file an MR, but if I know the Supreme Court, they will, it's a question of maybe refining and clarifying certain points. But on the main, I suspect the Supreme Court will retain their decision. And if I recall correctly, there was no dissent here, or was there? There are 3 dissent. All right, so you have a long way to go. Anyway, so I go down. I was asking, where do we source a potentially huge amount that we have to add to the budget of expenditures? I thought I saw
Yes.
in some article you were going to issue bonds, samurai bonds, to be more exact.
We just
you
we
did.
just issued the samurai bonds, but they're not earmarked for that.
Okay, so so I go back to the question. This is something like my very rough estimate. Just talking here. It's at least 250 billion.
Yes. In fact, with the Mandanas decision alone,
Yes, 195.
without the allocation for the BOL,
Yes,
our deficit will go up to 4%.
4%.
Yes.
From
From
the,
3.
from 3 to 4.
Yes. That's only Mandanas. We haven't calculated the one of the BOL loan.
But I don't think it will be substantially very far from 4% if you
No,
talk.
it's a little more, obviously.
Yeah, obviously. So we go back to the next, are you prepared to answer the question, where will we source this, or we will just have to absorb a higher deficit in the budget?
No, we will not absorb a higher deficit.
Sorry?
We will not absorb a higher deficit. We
So-
cannot risk that.
Okay.
In fact, I just want to mention, I was just congratulating Leah, our national treasurer, because the samurai bonds that we issued, we had a better spread than Mexico, who is higher rated than us. So our spread was only 34.7 basis points for the average tenor of 1.3 billion US dollars. And those are the things that I don't want to risk. And a higher deficit will certainly risk that and mean actually greater pain for the general public. So
So
at this
what-
point, I really don't know where we will source the funds, but we will put our heads together and
You
try
barely-
to find out.
You have something like 3 months to figure out, Mr. Secretary.
May I say something,
Yes.
Your Honor? First, my apology for being late. But I've been monitoring you on YouTube, so there is a provision in the local government code. There's an escape clause that in the event of an unmanageable public sector deficit, the President actually may reduce the era for LGUs. President Ramos used that, but that was declared unconstitutional because he did not follow the process. But there is a process, Your Honor.
So please.
We can reduce the era in the event of an unmanageable public sector deficit, and certainly this is can be interpreted as unmanageable. Okay.
Yeah, so so the executive would have to make an initial conclusion or that there is an unmanageable fiscal deficit. Okay. Of course, this is subject again to debate and question up to the Supreme Court, because then that determination will cause a reduction of the internal revenue allotment if the executive so desires. All right. Now,
Or as an alternative, Your Honor, Congress may actually change the law while the MRI is running. Congress may initiate, they may actually reduce the ERA share to 30 rather than 40, which is about equivalent to the present situation. You know, as I recall, under President Marcos, the ERA share of LGUs was 40%, but not mandatory. It was discretionary. And therefore, some LGUs got 10, others 20, average 15. And so we thought when we presented the budget, when we presented the local government bill to Congress during the time of Mrs. Aquino, that 25% was a reasonable amount. So from 15 actual to 25 and make it formula-based, mandatory, that would be sufficient. However, when it got to the House, the Speaker at the time, Monching Mitra, was running for president, he made a suggestion, make it 35, not 25. When it reached the Senate, Senator Salonga was also running for president, and he said, make it 45, not 35. And so it's 35 plus 45 divided by 2, That's the history of the 40%, Your Honor.
But you see, politicians being what they are, they look at how acceptable this is to the people. And you mentioned that Congress can also do the declaration of or amend the law. You know, Mr. Secretary, there's such a thing as price of leadership, and unfortunately, if it is lodged with the president, I can assure you what Congress will say is the president is empowered to do so, and we'll be looking at the president to do this. In any case, that's neither here nor there. But may we know what is the timetable that you're looking at in order to make these adjustments? Because the budget is supposed to start January 1. We're working on it. By our estimate, we should have the budget on the floor traditionally in November. That's roughly 3 months from now. And in November, that's when we introduce the amendments. And at that time, we expect the adjustments to be made, whether, and as you said, you know, you will not take the risk of a higher deficit. So there must be a source of funds that you, or a reduction of some allotment of some entitlements. So first, may we know when this will be, in order that we can work on our own schedule here? I guess it has to be before November.
Your Honor, first we'll file an MR, and we'll wait for that, when that will be decided upon. Okay.
Oh, okay. But is it not more reasonable to assume that the MR, that the decision will not substantially change? For example, do not entertain the thought that the Supreme Court will reverse its decision and say the present practice will continue to be allowed. Remember, they interpreted national taxes, and our chairperson enumerated what are the other special laws that provide for national taxes. My interpretation is that it is the taxes under the National Internal Revenue Code, at the very least. That should be a reasonable basis for the computation of the internal revenue allotment. And as pointed out by Senator Escudero, it's the national taxes collected by the Bureau of Customs, which is in issue here. And these are the national taxes under the Internal Revenue Code, if I recall correctly. I'm sorry? VAT, yes. So I don't think, Mr. Secretary Jokno, that it is that it would be difficult for you to assume that there will be changes, substantial changes. If I think the more prudent step to take is what is the minimum exposure that we are looking at, work on this figure so that when the appropriate time comes for the adjustment of the budget before December 31, we can do so. It's very difficult to me, it is not very prudent to say the Supreme Court may reverse the decision. From our experience, Mr. Secretary, I don't think that will happen.
Well, as I said, of course, I heard what's on YouTube that we are also worried about the ball, right?
Yeah.
The Bangsamoro.
Yes, that's the other thing.
That's more manageable, that problem. We can actually submit a supplemental budget to make up for...
Not supplemental. Hindi na kailangan siguro supplemental. You adjust the...
Pwede rin po. If you, like what we did with the tuition, free tuition, we can do that. We look for some money inside, right?
Yes.
So that's more manageable than this one. Well, in the event of an adverse decision, we can, as I said, we can invoke that provision in the local government code that the president may actually suspend. Okay.
Yeah, that provision in the local government code, where is that? 164. Okay, for the record, Madam Chair, the local government code provides in the event that the national government incurs an unmanageable public sector deficit, the President is hereby authorized, upon the recommendation of the Secretary of Finance, the Secretary of Local Government and Budget, and subject to consultation with the presiding officers of both houses of Congress and the presidents of the Liga, make the necessary adjustment in the internal revenue allotment of the LGUs, but in no case shall the allotment be less than 30% of the collection of the national internal revenue taxes. Yeah. So, yeah. You can live with that by reducing the ERA. Whether the local government units can live with that is another question, of course.
Clarify, yes.
Yeah.
It will be actually no change. It will be no change.
Because there will be an additional from the Mandanas petition.
No. There will be no change for what they get
For-
now.
Why?
Because 30 is the same, 30% is the same as 40% with the Mandanas case.
Correct. Yeah.
So
No, that's
there's
why-
no change in their.
That's what we're saying.
But the basis is different now. Yes,
But
the
iba
basis
yung
is different.
source. Yeah.
Because the 30% or presently collected excludes the. No, it's 40, yeah. But the 40 excludes.
Yes.
You know, the national taxes
Yeah,
collected
by the customs.
by the customs.
Yeah.
So the base will become bigger.
Yes.
So it,
So there's no change. They will actually receive the same amount of money.
No, what they're saying is, assuming the president reduces it to 30, but because the Supreme Court, assuming you lose in your MR and they will gain from the Mandanas, it will balance off to the same amount now. That's what you're saying. Okay, clear.
Madam Chairman, with the permission of Senator Frank, on this point, from where the local government units are coming from, binilang na ho nila yung Mandanas. They will never think of it that way, that they're receiving the same thing. They factored it, counted it, at pinanaginipan na ho nila yon. Second, I wonder what the effect would be of government declaring an unmanageable public deficit to all of the other finances, particularly with our deficit. That will wreak havoc with respect to all of our borrowings and other financial arrangements that government may have.
No, actually not, because they will recognize that we are acting upon it.
That's how they will react, really?
Yes. Yes, in other words, we're not allowing an unmanageable situation to continue. They will appreciate it.
I hope you're correct, because in the first instance...
No. What the Secretary of Finance is saying is, they will declare an unmanageable public sector deficit, reduce the ERA, and say we have solved the public deficit.
I'm worried about the declaration part only, but I hope you'll be able to ride that out.
That's how I read the finance people to be going to do. They'll declare an unmanageable fiscal deficit. They will declare that the ERA will be adjusted, and the unmanageable fiscal deficit is now manageable. Ganun lang yun eh.
Yeah, you know, what this administration is trying to do is really, as I said many times, increase the horsepower rating of our economy by taking away the choke points first. The choke points in logistics, in traffic, and we are improving our airports, our seaports, our different national projects. So by doing that, we anticipate that our economy will be operating at a higher level, and that the business will be much easier to do. Cost of transportation will go down. People will have a actually better lifestyle, because they don't have to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to get to a job at 7. So these are the things we are trying to do. And it's going to be a question of national priorities. who can do that better? Will it be the local governments or will it be the national government? So that is essentially the issue here. It's not that, you know, we don't want to give it to the local governments, but the question is who can do it better? So that is the real issue here.
I'll go to another topic, and then I will yield the floor if
Yes, another topic. But
Yes.
before that, earlier the Secretary mentioned about certain national services which are funded now in national agencies, that if the Mandanas petition, if your MR loses, then you will devolve, because health is already devolved. You mentioned farm-to-market roads. Right now, we have billions of pesos lodged in various national agencies for FMRs. DAR, DA, of course, even the peace process OPAP has their own FMR. Kanya-kanyang FMR ang tayuan ng FMR dyan, ng gulo-gulo nga. So, ibig nyo sabihin, maaring sa pag-craft natin ng ating NEP, GAA, ay tatanggalin na dun kung nakalodge na sa automatic appropriation sa IRA at saka sa Mandanas petition, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So
In fact,
without expanding the pie, you can actually find
We
out.
can
And
actually-
you're correct in saying, sorry, I just wanted it clear, that it's just a matter of really saying who will implement, the national agencies or the local. But it doesn't mean it's a big problem that we have to expand the pie and increase our deficit because we can get from the same pie. The presidential prerogative of reducing the IRA, and then but with the LGUs not reducing what their take because there's a Mandanas on top of that, or lodging it to LGU for implementation based on the extra funds and resources they have based on Mandanas, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, understand
Yeah,
clearly.
in fact, we can give you a study in a week's time. What will happen if we strictly implement the local government code, meaning those that were devolved, those that were devolved should be done by the LGUs. Like, for example, we have devolved social welfare, no? We have devolved basic health care. But in the budget, you see all this. I remember the time when the budget of DOH was only 10 billion and the DSW did less than 10 billion. Ngayon, laki na eh. Because
when
we-
it's 107,
Correct, because we have assumed functions that are supposed to be theirs. So we'll give you a study on that, but
yes.
that's a big fight with our house mom,
Okay.
I'm sure. Okay?
so on another issue, yesterday the inflation rate for July came out at 5.7% now. When we were crafting our legislative calendar, there was a specific request that we adjourn for a week sometime in August. And although it was not initially explained to us by the House where the request came from, we subsequently got to know that the intention is to adjust the tariffs in accordance with, I think it's with the Tariff and Customs Codes, which would allow the President the power to adjust tariffs where Congress is not in session. That is the reason for the adjournment. First question, why did we have to wait when Congress resumed session? Why could we not have done this before July 1? Yes.
Madam Chair, Honorable Senator, well, we are now in the process of deliberating on reducing the tariffs on certain commodities such as fish, which has a very high rate of inflation, fish, meat, vegetables, and even feed wheat. In fact, this was suggested by the Speaker, the new Speaker of the House. So we are now, in the process of having, we'll have a public hearing on Friday on this issue of or on this project of bringing down tariff rates from, for example, for meat it's about, for fish it's about 15%, For meat, it's as high as 20%. And for other products that we are looking at, vegetables, it's also pretty high. Corn for feeds is 35%, feed wheat 7%, vegetables is 0%. It's only 0 to 40% ang vegetables pala. Okay. Yeah.
My initial question, Mr. Secretary, is why did we not do this before July 1 when, we didn't have to revise our calendar and have an adjournment only for the adjustment of the tariff?
Mr. Senator, it's because we were analyzing the figures that were coming out, and we noticed that the month-to-month inflation rate between April and May was actually very flat. So it was zero increase. So we felt at that time that might have been signaling the flattening out of the inflation rate. However, from May and June, it went up 0.6%, and between June and July, it went up 0.5%.
But Sonny,
yes.
so before we opened on July 1, you already saw
No, we did not. We did not.
It was
it
there was
came
this-
out. It came out after July 1.
no,
It's a deceleration.
Huh?
Deceleration in deceleration. Yeah.
Anyway, you just do not want to say that it took the Speaker Arroyo to to suggest this. Anyway,
Appreciate their suggestion,
Okay,
but
yeah.
it was already, as I
Yeah, all
said,
right, yeah, okay.
under consideration.
so, second point, I noticed that you did not mention Secretary Pernia rice, the rice tarification. You mentioned fish, meat, vegetable, corn used as feeds, and a few other items, but you did not mention rice.
Well, because we are seeing that the rice tarification bill is moving quite well. in terms
Let
of-
me tell you, Mr. Secretary, that yes, it was passed by the House yesterday. It's not even in our, we haven't even received it, we haven't studied it. I can assure you that we will not be able to decide on that when we adjourn our sessions on August 15 as requested. So do not hope for a rice tarification law before in the next several weeks or a couple of months at least. Because firstly, it was the executive, to our understanding, who requested that we adjourn for a week in order to work on the tariff rates. Because under the law, the president can fix the tariff rates if we are in adjournment. My question to Secretary Pernia is, you mentioned fish, meat, vegetables, corns when used as feed, that where you were going to adjust the tariff. I did not hear you mention tarification of rice.
rice actually has no tariff. It is
Okay, the
it's under
quantitative restriction.
Right, that's right.
Okay, so you are going, but are you going to impose a tariff on rice importation and remove the quantitative restriction?
Yes, that's the
You seem to be so,
No,
yeah?
that is the direction we're.
That's correct. That is the direction that you're going to, because rice is a major staple that affects the prices of or the inflation index. So you are going to review and include the tarification of rice and remove the quantitative restriction. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So why don't you say so? Why do we have to? Okay. So what are we looking at insofar as the rice tarification is concerned? Because just for the benefit of the public, what you will do is allow free importation of rice. Remove that legal fiction that only cooperatives and farmers organization, etc., can import rice. This time, anyone can import rice. Is that correct? Please use the microphone.
Yes,
As long as they pay the appropriate tariff.
that's correct.
And how much, would you have an indication how much it will be? Or is that something that you would rather not
No, it's
say?
35%.
35%.
Yeah. Within the ASEAN.
I'm sorry?
In the ASEAN.
Yeah. The reality is, ASEAN na naman tayo bumibili.
That's
Masyado.
correct, that's correct.
We find, so it's the 35% on rice. Now, I already hear in the media complaints from our farmers about because of weather conditions here and in the exporting countries where we source our supply.
Well, the shortage here will be more severe, for sure, versus Vietnam, Thailand, and Myanmar.
I'm sorry,
The shortage due to climate change, I think that's what you're referring to, will be more severe here than in the rice-growing countries of Thailand, Vietnam, and Myanmar.
Okay. And I do not know what is the standard now, but I do not know what is the volume of the palais in the bodegas of the
Supply of rice in the domestic market is concerned. There are three sources. One is households.
Yes.
These are the farmers themselves. From that perspective, I think we have enough rice. And
Okay.
then commercial rice is also available. Again, we don't have problems with the commercial rice. But it's the NFA that has to import rice based on government to government or government to the private sector. So in general, I think we have enough rice at this point.
So why are we suspending session in order to do tariff adjustments on rice importation, and remove the quantitative?
The problem, Mr. Chairman, is that the price of rice in the Philippines is a lot more expensive compared to when we import rice from some of the ASEAN rice producing countries.
Because our production cost
Yes.
is higher.
That's
Lack of
right, Mr.
irrigation,
Chairman.
post-harvest facilities, etc., which I hear every.
Benta ng mura. Typical na politika sa bigas yan na pinag-uusapan panahon pa ni Marcos at bago pa niya. But my question is, if you import and allow cheap rice to come in, fine, bababa ang presyo ng bigas. Paano naman po yung magsasaka natin?
The revenue from the tariffs on rice will be used to, it's called the Rice Enhancement Productivity Fund, Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund, and that will help farmers improve their productivity, or they can shift to other higher value crops.
Secretary
Or-
Pernia, that's an unrealistic assumption because ang tagal nang tinuturuan natin yung 8.2% ang income. You mentioned something like that yesterday. Kaya ko yung inflation mo 5.7, okay pa rin. If you'll do this, paano tataas yung income ng magsasaka? Again, how do you address that issue? Through subsidies? So nagtaas tayo ng train, subsidy tayo sa jeepney driver, kung anong taasan natin, it's highly inefficient. And even as we speak, I don't even know if the DOE has actually rolled that out. That has been the issue with most senators with respect to Train 1. Because the subsidies in supposed to be mitigating measures aren't being rolled out as fast. And again, we're going to do it insofar as rice is concerned. Ang jeepney driver, walang 200,000. Ang magsasaka or those dependent on farming actually are much more than that. And I don't know how you will distribute that efficiently and without corruption. Please, sir, how do you intend to use Secretary or anyone?
Yes. No, just to clarify on the statement that I mentioned yesterday.
Yes, ma'am.
That was actually an estimate. Yun yung average for all, no? And we're saying that if everybody would have that much increase in income, yung tinatawag natin na distribution neutral, then mas mataas kasi yon kesa sa increase in prices, and therefore we will still see poverty reduction. So the key really is to make sure that those in the lower income groups would have at least that, if not much higher increase in income.
So ma'am, you're talking of the ideal pala, but where did the 8.82 increase in income come from? If the minimum wage rates increased by the respective regional tripartite wage boards only gave a minuscule increase, saan ho galing yung 8.82% increase in their income? Let's talk minimum wage workers. Saan galing yun?
Yung average increase na yon is really based on the DBCC target. Kasi
No, we're talking actual already because you're saying
yes.
hindi hindi tataas ang poverty in spite of the increased inflation of I think it's at 5.7 last month. So, where did the 8.82 come from? Paano tumaas yung income nila ng 8.82%?
Yun po ang ano yung latest natin. We are looking at the gross national income per capita. And current prices po to, hindi hindi yung
Ma'am, saan nga galing?
prices.
Just tell me, where did it come from? Surely did that come from the increase in the minimum wage granted by the regional tripartite wage boards? So where did it come from?
Yung average wage po. So it's not just the minimum wage, pero the average wages. For sa lahat-lahat po.
Sa lahat-lahat. Ma'am, you're probably counting government employees, and a big chunk of that came from uniformed personnel, which we nearly doubled. But that's an unfair analogy. I mean,
Hindi
you can factor that in and say,
At saka maliit lang yung government kasi that's just 1.5 million. So it's for the entire nagko-kolekta po tayo every quarter on the labor force survey, and isa po yun sa tinatanong yung average pay, yung basic pay.
And
so
it
it's not
went
just
up?
for the minimum wage. Yeah.
no, but I'm concerned about the minimum wage because they're the poor. They're the ones who need help. Diba? When you want to reduce poverty, you look at the minimum wage earners. Why will I look at those earning huge and fat salaries from corporations, even the soldiers and the police or even senators or congressmen, tumaas lahat ng sweldo nila? Ako hindi kasi kami nag-aproba, so hindi applicable sa amin yun. But anyway, it's beside the point. But so, saan galing yung 8.82? If the poorest of the farmers, papapasukin nyo bigas, tapos bibigyan nyo ng subsidy na lang from the tariff income, I don't know how many months that will take. Minimum wage did not increase. So, paano mag-i-increase yung income ng mahirap by 8.82%? Saan niya kukunin ho yun? Where will he or she get that from? That 8.82% increase?
Ang isa rin kasi namin nakita is tumataas din kasi ang employment, ang jobs generation natin. So for instance, in April, we saw that more than 600,000 ang jobs generated. And 425,000 of
that's
that
increase
is
in employment, ma'am. We're talking
Yes.
increase in income. Hindi naman pwedeng i-compute nyo na mula zero, wala siyang trabaho, bigla nagkatrabaho, and then factor that in to come up with an 8.82% increase in overall income. I mean,
what we're saying po is tumataas yung demand for labor, and with the higher demand for labor, tumataas din ang niya.
see it and I don't feel it, and I don't hear anyone really proclaiming to the high heavens that their income actually went up by 8.82%.
Yes. And just on that point, Mr.
Nobody
Senator.
will admit,
No, wait.
especially to their wives. But
In fact, in the presentation yesterday, that 600,000 jobs created was with a color red because it is not, it's below the projected job generation that we have to do in accordance with our plan. And moreover, you cannot claim the 600,000. Why? Because there are new entrants to the labor force which also would be looking for jobs. That is why the medium-term development plan projects X number of jobs to be created by the economy in order to absorb those who are new entrants. And the 600,000 that you mentioned, from your own data said this is below what we project in order that our economy can move forward. So that 600,000 jobs should not be cited for purposes of increasing the average income at 8% as you're claiming. Thank you.
actually, ma'am, just unless you can answer, but you can
The-
also
yeah,
submit
yeah.
it to us
Hindi,
where
just
the
to-
8.82 came
Just to
from.
clarify na yung red na yon was actually for the 2017, and yung 600,000 na sinasabi namin, that is for April of 2018. So for the first, actually for the first two rounds of the labor force, January and April, nasa ano tayo, nasa 1 million average
O
employment
naman,
generation.
katagal na namin tinitingnan yung mga ganyan statistics. You know, I'm looking at your own presentation. NEDA ba? Is there NEDA ba? Yeah. Yes, employment generated, 2017, 663,243 for 2017 in red, because that is not that is below the targets that you were projecting for 2018. For 2018, your planned target is anywhere from 900,000 to 1.1 million, and you are nowhere near that. So please don't insist, because that we will never accept your proposition that the additional employment that you have generated has resulted in an increase in the income of those who are presently employed. Anyway, thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Cadiron, we shifted the definition of unemployment and followed ILO standards. And that brought down the unemployment immediately from 11, if I remember correctly, down to 7. Principally because the ILO definition which we adopted and which we are still using up to today would exclude unpaid family workers included. It would exclude, no, it would include rather, it would include unpaid family workers na employed. Unpaid nga, pero employed siya. I mean, so sinama niyo yung unpaid family worker as employed, sinama niyo yung nakapagtrabaho ng 6 na buwan sa loob ng 1 taon bilang employed. Ilang buwan? Dapat buong taon? O 3 months lang?
1 hour for the past week.
O di mas maliit pa pala. So employed na siya kung nagtrabaho siya ng 1 hour in the past week. At pangatlo, hindi na rin yung sinama, ewan ko kung paano nyo nakukuha yung data, yung napagod na maghanap ng trabaho at hindi na naghahanap ng trabaho. Hindi na siya unemployed kasi hindi siya naghahanap ng trabaho eh. Di ba? I mean, that's your definition right now.
No, kasama siya sa unemployed.
I don't
Yung
think so, ma'am.
kasama siya. Discouraged workers kasama sa
You
unemployed.
do not include from the gross numbers those who are no
Of the employable.
longer looking for work. Yung unemployed are those looking for work but could not find work.
Tinatanong din po, if they're not looking for work, they're being asked, bakit? So kung they believe no work is available, they will still be included in the unemployed.
Pero kung tamad lang siya dahil may OFW siyang anak na binibigay sa kanya lahat ng kailangan niya, hindi siya kasama. Again, so it would be nice to know the level of the employable workforce among Filipinos. Diba? At ilan talaga yung may trabaho na kumikita siya ng sapat. For reporting purposes, I completely agree with you so that we have all the same data in relation to other countries. But internally among ourselves, we would want to know, diba, ano ba talaga yung level of unemployment? Instead of making us all feel better that it's going down, when in fact, it's only through the gaps and cracks of the nitty-gritty of defining it that it actually went down.
No, in 2017, it was 5.7%. In the first semester of 2018, it had gone down to 5.4%. So there
Agree,
was a
Secretary Pernia. Again, but that's the ILO definition. What I'm asking for, can you submit to us, what's the real picture? Meaning, ilan ba yung Pilipinong malakas, nasa saramang edad, na kaya magtrabaho, na walang trabaho? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think everybody agrees that our problem is not only unemployment, it's underemployment. Where people who
Agree.
want to work just don't have the right jobs. However, we are experiencing, and we check with construction people, particularly in the construction industry, where there are actually shortages of skilled machine operators. There are shortages of finishing carpenters. just go and try to get an apartment finished up now. It will take you a long time because there are just simply no people available. So the picture is not exactly uniform. I mean, there are spots that we have labor shortages. There are spots that there are underemployment, and there are spots that people just can't find jobs. So what we are doing is we are investing a lot of money in training and education to make them actually employable in fields that are in demand. Yesterday, Senator Villar said that they are working closely together with the TESDA precisely for targeted training programs for skilled construction workers. If you go to Clark, our projects in Clark right now cannot go 24 hours because we don't have enough skilled crane operators, skilled bulldozer operators. So we are trying to upgrade people's skills. Unfortunately, we still have a lot of people who are undertrained. And we still have a lot of people who live in areas that are not accessible to roads, that do not have more job opportunities. And that is why we are doing build, build, build. So that the roads get there, people are encouraged to farm more, to have commercial enterprises, and jobs are going to be created. So it's a process, Senator, and it's not easy. It's going to take a long time, and there are frustrations along the way. Thank you.
Sir, I agree. Actually, the general theme of most of my questions would really be empathizing and sympathizing with the economic team, because there is a clear disconnect with how the economic team wants our economy, how the economic team wants our economy to run in the direction it will take, compared to what is happening all over you within the same government. You're correct on skilled workers. I told Secretary Lopez this, for the first time, ang daming perang inallocate sa infrastructure, but they never planned out, hindi lang ho skilled workers, yung kakulangan dahil kulang talaga. They never planned out yung supply ng bakal, yung supply ng aggregates, yung supply ng semento. DTI never looked in, they just thought it's DPWH, build, DOTR, but nobody looked into it. Delayed yung mga local cement plants sa pagdagdag ng linya nila, so ini-import natin na mas mahal, yung iba pa, below quality, at ang tagal magpa-approve ng imported cement. That actually caused most of the delay in infrastructure. But I'm glad you said build, because I know Secretary Jokno will tell me that we are allocating more money compared to the obligation base despite the build. I'm already answering for you, Sec Ben. But my question is, correct me if I'm wrong, for the first time, ngayon lang bumaba ang budget. I mean, regardless kung cash-based o obligation-based, ngayon lang bumaba ang budget year on year. Since time immemorial perhaps, or at least since...
Ganun po. But given our new system, nababayaran yan on time ngayon. Kaya nga we're ahead eh. We have spent more than what we programmed for the first time in history again. Okay?
Based nga po in your presentation,
So
yung
may
cash-based-
illusion lang po na nakat natin, na-reduce, but in real terms, we have increased.
I'm going there, sir. So, yung unadjusted cash-based ng 2018, projected to, I presume, is 3.3 trillion. The cash-based proposed budget is 3.7 trillion, or an increase based on this of 13%. Would that be correct, sir? And this was principally designed to address the underspending and low absorptive capacity of the agency. Sabi nyo nga, hindi pa naman handa gawin, ba't natin pupondohan? But sir, akala ko kasi yung underspending, gaya ng sinabi ni Secretary Dominguez, kulang kasi yung sa construction worker eh. Hindi kasi na plano yung availability ng aggregate, semento at bakal eh. Yung agency mismo mahina eh. O sobrang dami nilang ginagawa bago ma-implement yung project eh. O may delay talaga sa bidding process eh. May problema yung procurement law eh. So, am I correct to say that the immediate solution to underspending and low absorptive capacity is to give them less money? para kung ano lang yung nagagastos nyo, yun lang yung bibigay namin. So immediately, there will be near zero underspending because that's all that they can. But it's not really increasing, di ba, their capability to implement bigger projects, larger projects, which government can very well provide the fiscal space for.
Now, Your Honor, if you look at history, in the last 50 years, we spent less than 3% for public infrastructure as a percent of GDP. Now we're spending about 5, 6. So we're spending more under this administration. And we have shown the capacity to spend. Hindi, we're debating on, sabi ko nga, we're comparing apples and oranges. We have actually reformed the system. You are given 1 year to obligate under the present system. That is a major departure from the previous system where you are given 2 years to obligate. So may illusion lang na, halimbawa, binigyan ko po kayo ng 200 billion for one project. Ang magagawa mo lang naman doon ay ma-obligate mo yon. Obligate nothing constructed by December of next year pa. So binago namin talaga yung sistema. What you can do this year, you have to obligate this year.
I agree, sir. I complete. Because I would have thought, kung ang DepEd hindi kaya makapag-implement ng 106 billion worth of school buildings, at ang kinaya lang nila, what you're giving them next year is 34 billion a year, I would have thought that the remaining balance of approximately 68, 67 billion would have gone to faster moving items in DepEd, or to faster moving items, still capital outlay, still infrastructure, in DOTR, in Department of Health, wherever. But as we see in the budget, DepEd went down, DOH went down, DPWH went down by at least 100 billion for DPWH, by about 50 billion for DOH, and by about 70 billion for DepEd. So, yung fiscal space na yon, yung mabagal nilang pag-implement, based on what I see in the budget, napunta sa sweldo. Hindi naman napunta sa infra spending. In fact, our overall infra spending went down. Ba? Kasi sa pinasang mga batas na in-increase yung sweldo ng uniform personnel, di ba? With our passage of the free tertiary education, so doon ba napunta? So doon, sir, napunta? Kasi ang thought ko nga sa cash base, so imbis na 1 billion project ng DPWH, you would list down 10, 100 million projects that they can implement within the year.
Yun lang po yung illusion na malaki yung budget. For 2017, you're right. We provided for 107 billion, 106 billion for school buildings. Alam niyo ba ngayon palang ginagawa yun?
Alam ko po yun, Chairman, ako ng EDUC at inaway ko na.
Ngayon palang ginagawa po yun. Kaya may illusion nga na malaki yung budget mo, pero hindi mo naman nagagawin. Look at this. These are the 4 ministries. Yung red bar is the disbursement. Yun nagawa na yun, nabayaran. Yung blue bar are obligate 25 plus 50. That's a waste of money. There are more projects that are moving and important.
You recognize?
You answer. Before you proceed, we'd like to recognize Senator JV and Senator Ralph Recto, who will ask after Senator JC.
Actually, it's not a waste of money dahil kung hindi gumagalaw, hindi naman nila ginastos. It's a waste of fiscal space. Dahil nag-allocate ka sa kanila, hindi naman nila ginagalaw di ba?
Waste of resources that could have gone to better use for the poor.
But that's my whole point. If we will not allocate that money to them anymore, then I presume, again, kung hindi kayang tapusin ang isang 1 billion na tulay sa isang taon, I would have thought, cash-based, de gumawa kayo ng equivalent pa rin na 1 billion, let's say 10 tigi 100 milyon na kayang tapusin within the year at kayang bayaran within the year, or 50 o 20 tigi 50 milyon na kaya din matapos within the year, so that the infra spending would still be the same. Because it's an illusion to Secretary to say that underspending went down because we allocated less money to them. I would have rather keep the level and improved somewhere along the way how they can best utilize the money, whether it's DOH, DPWH, DepEd. I'm sure there are
Well,
As Secretary Dominguez said, choke points along the way. I would rather address those choke points than tell them, since we can't spend it, babaan na lang natin.
The reality, Your Honor, is that the return on investment for that 1 billion bridge is not the same as the rate of return on the 10, 100 million projects. Yun po ang totoo nun. Baka we're just frittering away resources by putting it in small projects kung maganda naman talaga yung 1 billion. No?
Ano, sir, Secretary, malalaking project din to. In fact, the program of DBM is imamayawan nyo na nga eh. Kasi yung 5 billion bridge, hindi naman kayang tapusin, di ba? Imamayawan mo na yan ng 5 years or 7 years. So presumably, ganun din. But nangihinayang lang ho ako dun sa fiscal space. Again, I'm sure DepEd has faster moving projects. And if Secretary Dominguez is talking of choke points in the expenditure of money, we were talking earlier about the ERA. Sa totoo lang, kahit magkano bigay nyo sa LGU, kaya nilang lapain, forgive the language, at ubusin yun. I mean, kulang pa nga yun eh. So if you're talking of absorptive capacity, hindi ba, edi kung sobra-sobra talaga yung pera, edi ibigay sa LGU, may implement nila, sigurado yun. Kulang pa nga palagi eh. Kesa niliitan natin yung allocation and the budget went down, even if it's 10 billion, but taxes went up, collection efficiency went up, you have a new tax law, and then your total budget went down and all your infra spending also, allocation-wise at least, also went down because you're assuming they can now do it 100%. Sir, maniwala ka, ugali ng Pilipino, pag hanggang dito lang yung binigay mo, hanggang dito rin sila. They will never achieve 100% of the allocation you gave them.
Let me tell you how we arrive at the 3.767.
757.
757. Yun po ang tinatawag na aggregate spending. That's the ceiling. We determine that by, first of all, talking to the Department of Finance, how much money can they collect on the revenue side. And then we determine how much deficit can we tolerate on a sustainable basis. So yun po yun, revenues plus the deficit, which is based on the macroeconomic forecast, yun po yung ceiling. No? And then how do we arrive at the fiscal space? We look at the ongoing projects, and ito pong lumabas. Ganyan po yan. Hindi po yung, walang magic doon, ganun lang po yan.
Did the ceiling come from the DBM or the agency, sir? The cap?
The ceiling came from DBCC. Yun po yan.
The agency also submitted?
They will submit, and then we allocate on the basis of the ceiling. Yun po. According to their needs. No? If they come up with viable projects, profitable projects with high IRR, yun po.
Please.
With the permission of Senator Cheese, just one question, Mr. Secretary. I keep on listening to you, and I could not help but come to the conclusion that this is the antidote to insertions in Congress. Why? Because when you insert the project, certainly walang plano yun eh, hindi ba? Pagdating ng Enero, wala pang gagawin pa yan, bidding, let's say tulay, talagang hindi matatapos yan, nothing will happen in 1 year, especially for bigger projects. Now, what will happen to the earmarking done during the budget debates and the discuss system of the budgeting? What will happen? I'll give you a specific example. Legislator A will say, kailangan,
Let's call him Congressman A.
Kaya na sinasabi kong legislator, ikaw naman, no? I will insist on legislator. Legislator A will say, this Secretary Jokno, when he had the budget for my municipality of Rizal, did not take into account what people needed. They needed a bridge. Therefore, I will earmark, and I use earmark and not pork barrel. I will place an earmark of 50 million. No plano, nothing whatsoever, study, nothing. That's the nature of the insertion. Ngayon. So, ma-approve na yan. That's a reality. Oh. January 1, budget approved. Okay, so si legislation is lost. On January 1, in that example, January 1 of the following year, zero.
Zero po. Zero.
Yeah. Okay, I just want to make that on record.
No,
So, para malaman ni legislator,
diba,
doon sa kabilang
ang
bahay.
ideal situation po, ganito, if you are elected legislator, and then you can think of, for example, a district, what is your plan for your district? Sana ganun. For the
Plan
next
for my
3
district
years.
is that I will win the next election.
Ay, kaya nga, for the next
And therefore,
election,
I have to look for
I want the following.
projects, I have to look for contractors.
Correct.
Ikaw naman,
For the
no?
next
Bilang
for the next 3 years, you
Oh.
look for projects.
Oh, sige.
Then you talk it with your the PWH, the OTR. Plano ka naman. Hindi yung spur of the moment, magsisingit ka ng ano. Yun po.
I'm not saying that this is that.
Just put it there, which is good.
Consistent
That's how
po ako
planning should
ganito yan. Between a district engineer and a congressman, may karapatan naman siguro yung congressman na mag-identify siya ng project in his district. Hindi ba? Elected yung isa naman.
be.
Ano,
You should talk to the DE.
correct.
So
You
that
have,
there's
you have to do it through the bureaucracy.
Madam Chairman, I assure Senator Dillon, since 2019 is an election year, all of those funds will be obligated and the contractor will be chosen too. Within January.
Obligation
Before the
is-
election
No,
ban
no,
comes
election
into play.
is, obligation is no longer relevant. It's the cash. And, Mr. Secretary, in that example, if the bridge is,
The budget is signed into law, perma na yun.
you are talking about, you're not talking about the insertions. Anyway, we can go to another topic. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Manong Frank, for your interjections. Earlier, Senator Frank asked about how much was the BOL bill. And according to Secretary Dominguez, kino-compute pa lang. Would it be possible that by the time we reach the floor, we would know how much exactly that bill is? Our problem, no, because Secretary Dominguez was shaking his head about the 5% of internal revenue. I just showed how wide Secretary Dominguez's eyes can get when Senator Ralph said 110 billion. Basically, our problem, Secretary, is we don't get any indications from the executive. When we were writing the BOL, and I was even part of the BICAM, there was, you did, but the executive representatives, it's like a disjoint executive eh. Iba yung posisyon, just like the train 2 being proposed in the House. You have the picture of PESA opposing it. I mean, and then in this BOL, you have the BTC saying this is it. You have the OPAP saying bigay na yan. There's no price tag to peace. Better an expensive peace than war. I mean, hindi sa united front ba na sinasabi sa amin na ganito ito lang, ganyan, ganyan. Whether it's PLLO or, I don't know, lack of a united stand. I take note of Secretary, an amount you can give me, how much the proposed federal government that they have crafted will cost? The figure I saw that PIDS computed was about 55 billion, which includes the 4 Supreme Courts, which excludes the regional governments, and which excludes the bigger Congress. Yeah, so how much exactly will it cost? Do you have an idea?
Well, our estimate, rough estimate, Naida, is 120 billion. But this is just the direct cost. Remember that there will be indirect costs like disruption in the and other things that will be, maybe our growth momentum will be disrupted also because of some,
Again, we're already at that stage. No, we're already at that stage na may na-allocate from savings na 90 million for the information dissemination of federalism. While we're there, saan hong item sinarge yun under the DAP ruling? I don't recall an item in the budget for 2018 on the information dissemination campaign for federalism. And according to Secretary Andanar, he realigned from their savings 90 million for this purpose. Under the DAP ruling, there must be an item in the budget. Hindi ba, Secretary? Meron po bang PAP yun? No, meaning under the executive department.
Siguro
Presumably.
merong PAP under the PCOO.
But we're talking of cash-based, Secretary, na may plano. Wala pang approved federalism. Anong ikakampanya natin? We don't even know in what shape, size, color, or form that is. What will we disseminate? If we're talking of, di ba, project ka, may plano eh. Siguro naman information dissemination,
Yung
may plano
content
din.
po niya nasa PCOO, whatever that is.
But what is that
Very
content
broad naman
precisely?
yung PAP niya. Ganun.
But sir, it's a draft. It's a draft proposed constitution na pagdidebatehan pa sa House na hindi pa natin alam kung anong hugis at itsura nun. Hindi ba dapat ang i-disseminate natin yung aprobado ng version para maintindihan ng tao? Hindi yung kung ano pa lamang yung pinagdidebatehan na pwedeng magbago completely. Eh, yun ang ilalako natin. Again, that goes beyond the logic of a programmed spending and planned spending on the part of government. But still on federalism, by the time we go to the floor, can we see how much it will cost us additional? Given the proposed constitution headed by the consultative commission, how much is that?
I heard the 20 billion, I don't know what the basis of the 120. I heard 120 billion from NEDA. May we, if you're not ready to submit it now, just give us a report on the basis of the 120 billion, but that's just the direct cost. What about, and I also heard disruption of projects that will be implemented. So may we have the economic team's comprehensive report on federalism, on direct and indirect cost, and the impact of the implementation of projects. That will affect everything if projects will be delayed because of a change of the form of government. And we're not even sure if we're changing from the present to what? Senator Cheese is correct. To what form? We're not even sure. How many regional governments? How many senators or representatives of the people per region? How many regions if we will increase the number of regions? We don't even know where it will be housed because it's more representatives. So just so that we understand, because I will be asked this on the floor, the 120 billion breakdown, direct cost, indirect cost, and yes, Secretary Sani.
You know, ma'am, the draft, as it is right now, doesn't lend itself for financial analysis. I'll give you an example. I sat with members of the commission, and you know, my first question was, how do they see that the national debt will be paid, the army, the military, the foreign affairs, central bank will be paid. And they said, oh, no, don't worry about that. This split will be after the national, those expenses. But I said, it's not in the draft. No, it's not there. So I said, what are you telling me? So how can we compute? We don't know what the final, roadmap is going to look like. So, you know, I had a long discussion with them, and quite frankly, I was more confused than when I started. So, it's good that it's being discussed by the...
So that if this draft is now presented for ratification by the people, assuming this is the draft, you will vote no, I assume.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, this particular draft. Yes.
Okay.
But it is good
Yes.
that it is being discussed
Okay.
by the wise legislators. And
Okay.
you have to bring out these points.
Okay, so it's very clear that based on the draft, the economic team, at least insofar as NEDA and DOF are concerned, it's confusing. So there's no need for more confusion in our country. There's so much confusion and chaos already. So the buzzwords I hear are projects will slow down and there's confusion and chaos. We don't need slowing down of projects and chaos in this country. We need order and progress and jobs for people in the grassroots. So if the economic team cannot even tell the Senate how much it will probably cost government, then we discuss, fine, anything can be discussed in a democratic space. But do we prioritize it? We don't want to ha-in confusion to our people. We don't want to ha-in slowdown of projects. We want build, build, build. We don't like slow projects. So, what does it mean?
Completely agree.
Okay, so clear. So the economic team and the Senate, at least here, I haven't read the draft. I'm not against it. I am for discussion, just so that it's clear. But because you cannot give us a cost, how can I be asked the cost and defend something which is unclear? Okay? So that's very clear. Ayan, naka-live tayo. Sige, I'm sure they will, iikot na naman yan, iba yung papaliwanag. Hindi galing sa amin. Hindi galing sa amin, galing sa economic team, si Secretary Dominguez. It caused him more confusion. Okay? Yes. No, I laud your guts to say that. Because it's true, it's confusing. Because hindi balik kung isa lang version, and dami-dami. Everybody has these Viber threads on their own version. We cannot confuse the people all the more. It is not derives respect from our constituents. That's all I'm going to say.
Madam Chair, by next week we will have some estimates for you on the.
How can you provide estimates on a confusing draft?
No, we read through the draft that was submitted to the
Okay.
president, and on that basis, we have some
Okay, I hope it
estimates.
does not confuse the
But
Senate
it's just
further.
it's
And let
just
us
the financial cost,
okay.
wala economic cost pa
This
yun.
is a very smooth DBCC. Let us not confuse the DBCC and our budget with that confusing federal draft. Okay? Sige, thank you.
3 years, 3 years. Sabi ko na hindi mo papalusitin yan, Secretary Sani. So, inflation, unemployment, given the proposed structure, the ease or facility of implementing projects as envisioned by Secretary Jokno, if we do it regional, ease in doing business as well, because now you will have different rules for different regions. Kung ako si Jollibee o si McDo o si SM, iba-iba ang kailangan kong prosesong sundan bago ako makapagpatuloy ng haba ng debate namin, nagpa-raffle pa kami, hindi naman raffle, nagpa-contest pa kami tungkol sa Senate building, ang haba ng debate sa design. Wala ho yata ako nakitang pondo para sa Senate building next year. Ang haba ng proseso, may raffle, may contest, may points, may awarding. Parang wala ho yan.
Pero kakala ko sufficient na yung naka-appropriate this year. 1.6 billion? Magkano ba yun, this appropriation? There's money for this year. Is that...
So, we're the cause of the delay. That's why if it's cash-based, wala na rin yun by now.
I see. But there's an appropriation, I think, for this year, right? Or next... Meron.
Which will
That's
last
why
until-
that's why I was asked, bakit bumaba yung sa Senado? Kasi kala ko kumpleto na yung amount na yan.
Based dun po sa nanalo, kulang yun, Secretary.
Initial.
It's initial, but again, so the validity of that will be until next year. Of next year. Tama ba? No, this year?
You know, there are many ways to finance that, okay? One is through the budget. Another way is we could go into a deal with, say, DBP or Land Bank, where you give us the design, we will build it for you, you lease it from us, parang lease to own. So there are many ways to do this. So that is one way without impacting the budget.
Sec, I was only requested because I'm graduating, I won't be able to stay in the new office.
That's how we plan to do the Tokyo building.
Yes.
Yes.
PPP. So we don't want to impact on the...
A few more
We don't want
points.
to impact the budget too much. No?
A few more points too. Secretary Ben, can you have your staff check page 253 of the BSF? I cannot understand or put any rhyme and reason into it. I think there's a page missing somewhere unless you submitted to us a correction. But our copy of page 253 doesn't make
We'll look into that, Your Honor.
much sense. 253 and 252. Now, on the military, our budget increased for uniform personnel from 80 to 152 billion because of the joint resolution passed by Congress. Again, it took us about 6 to 8 months to approve Train 1, And it took us a week to approve that because it was certified by the President. I don't even know if the economic team had any say in that.
Indexation, Secretary Dominguez and I are finally trying to look for a solution for that military pension, okay? This is the elephant in the room that was not touched by anybody for the last 20 years. Now, we have to solve that. We have to fix it. We have to come up with a new pension system which will now require new recruits to pay, to contribute. Because right now we're paying for it. There's no contribution, but there's a pension. How can you have a system like that? Okay.
Secretary, I tried to bring that up when we were discussing it. But apparently, the version that even Malacanang was pushing, the executive was pushing, still included that. I tried to correct it na, sige, taasan natin yung sweldo ng active, pero wag na munang isabay. The compromise apparently, or the indication apparently was, isabay, wag na lang sabihin kung kailan babayaran. But it added to the problem all over again. Please, Secretary.
Yes, Mr. Senator. Referring to the pension portion of the pension effect of the salary increase, by around the end of the month, we will be presenting a package to the President for his approval or endorsement to the legislature of some legislative measures that will address this pension issue. It is a very, very difficult problem, and I'm not sure we can solve it all, but at least we are going to start solving it. So in fact, we just briefed the President yesterday about it, and we told him, he gave us until the end of the month to come up with this.
With a solution. But right
with the package of legislation that will address this issue.
The attrition rate of the AFP, for example, is at 3 to 5%. So if you will correct something, may bagong pumapasok na 3 to 5%, then you can only correct it to the tune of a maximum of 5% if it's a new regime. So it'll take you about 20 years to be able to completely do it. As an example, Sec. If you offer them a lower retirement but cash today, if they retire, that's another option, but you're still looking at approximately an additional 5%. But my question, Sec, is, magkano ba yun? Gaano ba kalaking problema? How much exactly are we talking about?
Yes, how much will it cost us to fund past service liabilities if you have a funded retirement fund? How much?
4 trillion.
4
Past
trillion.
service liability is estimated
At 4
now
trillion.
around 4 trillion.
That's
Now,
bigger than the national budget.
Yes.
I just yesterday at the briefing.
Yeah.
Yesterday at the briefing, I said, number one, the actual collections of the BIR is less than 4 trillion for 1 year. Number two, our total economy, the size of our economy is
15.
17
17
billion,
Trillion.
17 trillion. So this is roughly 25% of 1 year's production of the economy. But I said, I mean, be that as it may, we cannot kick the can down the road. We are going to start the solution now. So give us until maybe early September to submit the
Just
proposed
for
legislation.
quick facts, how much do we spend today for the pension in the budget, and how much is the regular pay of our regular?
For 2018, our we allocated 63 billion for the pay alone, and 33 billion for the pension.
63 billion for
The pay.
for pay.
Yeah, and 33 billion for the pension.
33.
Yeah, so total of 96 billion.
Are you sure?
Yes, for this year. Next year it's going to be, okay, for next year,
No.
it's 119.7 billion for the pay
Yes.
and 33 billion for the pension.
Sir, I think nag-intersect na yan eh.
Yeah.
So may mga back pa.
I don't think. Yeah. Yes, honey. I find this.
We have arrears of 60 billion. We have arrears of 60 billion. Arrears.
Arrears of 60 billion.
Well,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I don't have the presentation.
So the 63 billion mentioned is current.
190 will be the total next year, if we pay the arrears.
No, wait. Huh? Can we have that clarified, Mr. Chair?
Leah has the numbers.
Oh, for 2018. Okay.
Okay.
What is the present under the GAA, no? What is the PS for our uniformed personnel who are entitled to, the PS current? Now, what is our allocation for the pension that we have to pay under the budget? Because it's not funded.
3 billion na po.
63 billion
For 2018.
is the
Sorry, PS.
is the PS.
PS.
Okay. Now, and what is the
Pension is
pension?
33
33,
or 96 billion.
or a total of 96 billion for PS and pension. What is the 60 billion that Secretary Dominguez is talking about?
That's the arrears.
Yeah.
She's been the one actually working in it.
Yeah.
So we have the 63 right now for the regular PS.
PS,
And
yes.
we have the 33 billion because since we do not have yet the plan, the law in place,
Yes.
we defer that if we have the plan already by this year, then we can already implement it next year. But so we have still the IOUs to the military for this year of about 33 billion. So come 2019, there's another 33 billion for the next tranche of the joint resolution. So that's about 60 plus 60, 120, 120 plus. And then the arrears of about 60 billion, so it would come to about 190 billion.
Yeah,
Manong
right.
Frank,
Yeah.
let me clarify. As far as I recall, it already intersected eh. So, so pag in-add mo yung 60 sa 33, it's more than what we're paying our active personnel. Only that we allocated only 33, kaya may utang tayong arrears na 60.
I'll tell you. Just
Yes.
think of it this way, okay? For every position that we have in the military, we are probably paying 2.5 people who are retired. So you have the guy who is doing the job, and there are 2 more guys who were retired doing that job and getting the pay of this guy now. So it's roughly that. It's roughly 2 retirees per job.
Which used to do that job, sir. Not doing the job.
No, 2 retirees for one guy doing the job. So per job,
Yes,
you
yes.
have between 2.5 or 3 people
yes.
being
Being
paid for
being
that.
paid,
Yes.
yes.
So
For-
that is the situation.
I asked that, Secretary, because it's, especially this government, it's a bit more inclined to hiring or appointing retired military personnel. It's just like Napocor all over again. Nung nalala nyo, nung nag-retire yung mga Napocor employees, tapos nirahire din ang Napocor pagkatapos nila kunin yung retirement nila. Sa mga rason, ba't nagkabaon-baon yung utang? But I see so many former uniformed personnel in government right now. May I ask, are they receiving their usual salary as secretary or whatever? Yes, I presume. They're also getting their pension. Isn't there something wrong about that? I mean,
Actually, no, actually, there is nothing wrong with it. In fact, I have many friends in the States, okay, who joined the military at 18, they retire at 38, they get another job at 38, they work until they're 55, so they have then they get a second pension, and then they get another job. So it's called double or triple dipping. But this is not
sir,
illegal.
sir,
It's
I'm
just,
not saying it's illegal. What
Yeah.
I'm saying is it seems wrong. Can't their pension be suspended and let them get the salary of a secretary, whichever is higher, but not to receive compensation twice over? Eh nakabalik naman na siya sa gobyerno with all the perks as well. So, at least mabawasan mo lang yung 4 trillion mo by, I don't know, by how many millions of pesos.
No, no, no. That's very small. I'm not saying it won't help, but it's really relatively small because there are maybe less than 20 guys doing that.
More, actually.
More ba? I'm
More,
not sure. I
actually.
don't have a count. Do you have a count?
More, because if you include members of the board, etc., who receive compensation as well, again, baka naman pwede kung sino yung mas mataas. Kung mas mataas yung pension kumpara sa sweldo niya in whatever capacity in government, then let him receive that in the meantime. As soon as he finishes his term, pag tinanggal siya, o nag-expire yung term niya, edi, ang dami rin hong congressman. Ganon din. May mga kasamahan din kami dito. But it's just, perhaps it's something you can look into. Not really to do something about, but to look into, with a view to rationalizing it really, because they retire too young. They retire too young. They have more workable years, whether in government or in the private sector. So sayang eh. Sayang naman talaga eh.
There are other factors, Mr. Chair, other than early retirement. You know, there are young officers who would want to go up the ranks. You just have to expand your uniform personnel so that you can accommodate the career path of everyone. It's not as simple as, you know, allowing them to stay longer, and therefore, admittedly, they still have talent, etc. But you have to also look at the next guy in line. That's why the solution there is what, expand the uniform service. You know, it's not an easy problem.
One last point, Mr. Chair. Yung 4 trillion, kasama na po ba doon yung increase sa pension na pinrovide ng Congress? So yun na yung almost double the salary, that's 4. Yeah, because the last time I heard you speak, it was 3, so 3 plus, so naging 4 na ngayon because of that.
Is oftenly discussed today in public with regard to what government's response should be as far as high inflation is concerned. And that is understandable because inflation is a silent tax. Inflation is not a tax on income, but a tax on wealth. Now, having said that, I've read on the papers that there is a plan there was a recommendation and there seems to be a plan to reduce duties on vegetable, fish, and meat products. Is this correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay. And we're talking about reducing duties, right?
Tariffs.
Tariffs.
Sir,
yeah.
tariffs, yeah.
Yes. And how much would be the loss to government with regard to
well,
this?
We haven't done the computation yet.
Not large. If it is not large, then how will that reduce inflation?
Actually, it's a combination of factors. Number one is the tariff itself is to be looked at. Number two, it's also to ease the process of bringing in food products and speed up the processing of the phytosanitary certificates and the restrictions on other meat products. By the way, the total amount of duty collected for chicken and fish is 1.8 or 1.9 billion. Yes.
So we were saying that by taking away these tariffs and duties, inflation is expected to go down.
That's
this
one. I said
particular
no.
products.
One is the tariff and duties, and the other one is to speed up and
Correct.
reduce the
And-
non-tariff barriers.
And therefore, there is also an admission that taxes create inflation.
Of course.
Of course,
There's
yes.
there's no question about
Thank you.
that.
Yes, yes,
But let me just point out
yes.
that in the train, the first tax reform that you passed, there were two taxes there that we had designed to increase the cost of the products because they are not helpful, or they are
Yes.
actually
You're-
taxes on products that cause ill health.
You're talking about sugar and cigarettes.
Sugary drinks
Cigarettes.
and cigarettes, yes.
Yes,
Correct.
I understand that.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so having said that, there's an admission that taxes create inflation. And kung minimal lang naman ang mawawalang revenues dito at 1 billion, then 1.9, very little as far as reduction in prices would be expected.
As I mentioned,
Yes, the procedure,
the
to fast
duties
track
is
the
one,
procedures.
and the
yes.
other one is to
Yes.
ease the non-tariff barriers.
Yes, understood, understood. Okay, so let's move on. What could be the other inflation mitigating measures that could be done to reduce the prices, inflation, maapekto ng gobyerno?
We actually been working on that for more than a month, and Undersecretary Beltran is the gentleman who has the
Yes.
latest info on that.
Mr. Chair,
Which-
actually,
which may also help
Yes.
our balance of payments position.
yes. But as of April, the data that we have, which we are trying to update, if we replace the oil, diesel with biochemicals, the increase in the price would be about 45 centavos per liter. We are trying to get new data.
If you take it out,
Yeah.
there's a reduction in prices. That's what you're saying.
No, there will be an increase in the price by 45 centavos. If we replace the
No, we're talking about
yeah.
reducing. My question is reducing prices.
yes, it's not,
Okay?
Let me
does-
just clarify.
Okay.
The Department of Agriculture suggested
Yes.
that we substitute diesel and use coconut oil instead.
Okay.
When we did the numbers, it seemed that the price would go up.
Would go up. Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Now,
but
today,
there are other
yeah.
factors
Yes.
that we have to consider, so other economic
Yes.
factors,
My
such
question
as
is,
less,
yes.
less
Yeah.
pollution,
Yes.
less. So
Yeah.
we are doing those
My
numbers.
question is, how can we reduce oil prices without affecting the revenues of government? Is there a way? No, specifically, for example, today, there is a mix already, right? What is the mix in diesel? What do we mix diesel with?
CME, coconut methyl
Isn't it
ester.
that we import all of that?
No, we are producing locally.
We're producing it locally. What do we import?
Maybe just the equipment.
No, I mean let's say bioethanol. Are we importing or are we producing it domestically?
We are producing it domestically,
For
but the
all these
production is so
products?
small. Yes.
Huh? Did
Yeah.
this raise the price of gasoline and diesel?
Yeah, it will increase the price of
No,
the,
today as we
yeah.
speak,
Yeah.
the price today of diesel and gasoline. I'm saying that there are many mandates of government. Let's start with petroleum. That if you take away certain mandates, these are coercive powers of the state. We pass a law imposed in the industry. At walang talo ang gobyerno dyan. Okay? That's one. Number two, electricity. With regard to electricity, that's one of the highest increase in inflation also. Diba? Utilities. Okay? Now, and I know that government is planning to file increases in power rates all over again. Fiscal, so on and so forth, right? Tataas na naman ang presyo ng kuryente. Now, what other mitigating measures can be done as far as reducing prices of electricity is concerned? Or at least not increasing it. What is the cost per kilowatt hour of feed-in tariffs, example? Would anyone know? May piso ba yan? Palagay ko, mahigit pa eh. And then there are plans of increasing prices. Diba? Okay? So, the suggestion is, and that's one of the reasons why we're asking this, is maybe we can really look at these two issues, as far as electricity, we're the second highest in Asia. Is that correct? Okay. And as far as petroleum, it has a multiplier effect on inflation. And that's why there are certain mandates that maybe we can take away so that prices go down. Nang nakikinabang lang with those certain mandates, a few people lang. Ang makikinabang as the budget is concerned next year, there's a 13% increase. All of these increases are already paid for, meaning to say we don't need to pass any tax law to fund the budget next year. Or do we need to pass Train 2 to fund part of the budget next year?
As far as I know, Train 2 is revenue neutral.
Okay.
That's how we deal with the budget.
There is no pressure on Congress to pass any tax measure this year to fund the budget.
Law that allows us to look into bank accounts
Yes,
in case.
it's part of the draft already. There is a
Yes.
draft.
Yes, I just want to remind the Senate that that was promised to us last March. Last March, it was during the BICAM, it was promised that
We are working on
would
it.
have been passed
And
last
maybe
March.
in a week or two. It's a very sensitive matter, as the Secretary knows, and that
Yes,
there is already a draft, and I'm sure that the Secretary has seen the draft.
yes, thank you.
And it's a workable draft. Okay, so the next point now will be, I'm not sure if someone asked this question already, but the Supreme Court has decided with regard to the local government, right? Yes. Okay. Yes. And what is the cost of that if we were to implement that this year?
195 billion.
The increase for this year, it's 195 billion. Yeah.
It is 195 billion pesos as we understand the law.
No,
But-
ulitin ko lang,
but
ha?
we
As
are-
far as, my question is simple, ha? For 2018, assuming we had to implement it for 2018, not 2019, assuming the Supreme Court decision says it's automatically appropriated, implement it now for 2018 because the decision came out in 2018, how much is the cost? No, I'm not talking about retroactive.
What?
I'm looking perspective na ako.
Ang ganyan.
Just
Anong
today lang.
difference? Huh?
190.
Yeah.
It's around 190. But let
190
me,
billion for 2018.
but
Yes.
we are seeking clarification. We are filing an MR.
Yes.
We are seeking clarification among others. When is the base date
Yes.
to determine this? Is it 3 years ago or is it now?
My understanding is it's prospective, right?
Yes. So
Is
when
that,
is the,
but is that your understanding it's prospective?
my understanding is prospective, but it is prospective
Yes.
when?
Yes.
When is the first year of the
Yes, I understand.
prospectivity? Is it
Okay.
2016? Is it 2015? Or is it 2018?
I suppose kung prospective, it is 2018 or 2019.
Correct. So the taxes we collect now will be shared 3 years from now. That's
Correct.
what, yes. Okay, so,
Okay, so-
if that's the case,
Yes.
we are seeking a clarification in the MR, then we don't have any impact on the GAA next year.
Okay, no, I'm talking about 2018. Okay? If the decision is prospective and they say you must implement it, okay, it is collections in 2016 for the 2018 budget. Is that correct?
That is one interpretation,
Yes.
yes.
Okay. And,
But
you're-
the other interpretation could mean,
and what is your wish? What is the position of the executive?
our wish is to be clarified in this and a number of other issues.
Okay, no. Okay, so ulitin ko. So, in effect, the executive is saying that kung prospective, the decision is 2018, collections starting 2018, 2021 na. Yes. Yes, yes. So that interpretation...
It could also be 2019 collection.
Yes, yes. That... No, 2019 collections will be given in 2022. That's what they're saying.
That is an interpretation.
Yes.
That is the interpretation that they wish is the correct
Correct.
interpretation.
That is correct. Yes.
Because the other interpretation is, since this is an interpretation of the Constitution and the local government code has been there since 1992, the collection of 2016
Correct.
should be of national taxes, including particularly those collected by the customs, should be the basis of the ERA computation effective this year. That could be another computation.
Yes, of course.
Okay, so now, okay. Assuming the Supreme Court decides, because that position is favorable to the national government at the moment. No, their position is favorable to the national government at the moment. Because later on, you know, it depends on how the Supreme Court decides. If the Supreme Court says, no, it should have been 2016, the future government will have tremendous debts. That is the downside. Ubus na yung future government. Posible. Yes. Yes. Okay, now, having said that, you know, securitization will not work also because you'll have to give money to the land bank or the DBP. It's not as simple as that. Now, having said that, okay, if the decision is 2016, 3 years preceding, meaning to say if the intention of the Supreme Court decision is implemented in 2018, how much should be the increase? 190 billion. Okay? So that will carry forward. And in 2019, what would be the increase? 2017. Oh. 17. Yes, and you know, I just like to put that on the record.
Yes, but there are other things we have to clarify.
Yes.
Are special taxes included? Like taxes on the
I understand.
PESA.
I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah.
I understand all of that. But these are minute, very little details. I understand. Okay. So how much would it be in 2019? Maliliit na kasi yung mga peso and all of that.
210.
Oh,
210.
210 billion. Okay. And then of course, may generic increase pa yan in the moving forward, no? So all of that will pile up if the Supreme Court says applicable yan 2016. And if we don't budget for it, it becomes a contingent liability. Is that correct?
Maybe.
Yes. Yes, it does. Kasi clearly, nanalo na sila eh. In effect, we're appealing. The national government's appealing. Now, let me move on. Wouldn't it be better, since there was already a few discussions, I'll zero in on that, on charter change, because that's another issue that everyone is discussing today, on federalism, okay? Wouldn't it be just better to implement the decision of the Supreme Court and provide these funds to local governments instead of changing the form of government and moving to federal, as suggested in the joint draft?
That is certainly a possibility.
That is certainly much better, is that correct?
I don't know, much better. It depends on the final decision, the final discussions and resolutions on the issues on federalism. It depends.
Yes, but based on the draft, your understanding, or the economic manager's understanding,
Earlier,
Yes.
we are very confused by the draft.
now, having said that, what is your interpretation of the draft today? Meaning to say, how many % of national taxes will be given to the region?
That I explained that earlier, Mr. Senator. I did meet with a former
Yes.
Senate President Pimentel and
Yes.
some members of the commission, and I asked them, who's going to pay for the national debt? Who's going to pay for the military?
And why is
foreign
that your
affairs?
concern? Why is that your concern? Isn't it because they're saying that 50% of the revenues
Yes,
of the current collection
yes,
will be given to the region, right?
yes.
Now, if we apply that to the 2019 budget,
It won't work.
what are we talking about,
A very large deficit.
right?
Yes.
So and that would happen to our credit rating. Mr.
Oh, it will go to hell.
And when the credit rating goes to hell, what happens to the Philippines?
Everybody pays higher interest rates.
Everyone goes to hell too.
Yes. Not naman hell, just pay higher interest rates. No.
Higher.
By the way, Mr.
And
Senator.
what could that interest rate look like?
Oh, tremendous.
Give me an example.
600 basis points, so maybe.
6% increase?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I'll give
Okay,
you.
and what would the exchange rate look like?
No, we don't know.
But could it be 100 to 1?
I don't know. I don't know.
75 to 1?
We have to ask the the member, our dear friends from the BBSP.
Okay. Next point. What happens to your build?
Well, I guess it will be no. It will be maybe. It's not build 3. It's build -3. Derailed.
Derailed.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but let me
Secretary,
continue.
one more point,
Yeah.
then I will allow you to continue. If the Bangsamoro, which I debated here for the longest time, and I was able to put in as much as I could, safeguards in the BBL. Now, if that were the model of your federalism, and we're saying that 5% goes to BBL, 5% of the BAR and BOC collections, and if you had 18 regions, magkano matitira sa national government? Halos ubos na. 10%. Not even enough to pay the debt. Not to mention, that's just a simple, straightforward 5%. Maraming mag-aaway dyan, lugi yung ibang regions. Because the ARM is only 0.6% GDP of the economy. And they're getting 5%. Minimum. Right? So, magulo yan. It's hard naman to give the other regions less than that. Parang ano yan parang magiging MRT7, yung isang bagon, may aircon, magandang upuan, leather seats, lahat. Iba standing room lang. Di ba? Right, that's right. 18 yung bagon Di ba? Okay? So, that's the point. Now, so this federalism, are there concerns when the credit rating agencies come and see you?
Yes.
Do they discuss this issue with you?
Yes.
Is it in their mind and in their discussions with you, tinkering with the Constitution and going to a federal system? Total revision of our structure of government. Would that be a political risk as far as they're concerned?
Well, certainly uncertainty, which is a
Yes.
political risk, yes.
And because of that political risk and uncertainty, there's uncertainty in their minds as well. And that may affect even just this discussion and the seriousness of the push, and depending on that equation, that doon pa lang, baka tumaas na kagad yung baba yung credit rating natin. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is possible.
That's possible,
That's
right?
possible.
Now, if this were not on the table, would that be a concern with the credit rating agencies? Everything would be a little more positive. Is that correct?
Yes, because it would be less uncertain.
Correct?
Yes.
So there's nothing to gain, so to speak.
Well, from that point of view, yes.
Yes. So we agree with the economic managers.
Seems I'm the one agreeing with you.
Now, Let me move on, and I'll try to be as quick as possible. Okay, now, I understand as well that the BOL, the cost of the BOL, and you know, we've made many computations and we've debated this for many, many hours and days in the Senate. And based on our office computation, working with the DOF and the DBM, it's roughly going to cost yung maliwanag na mga 110 billion, more or less. Yeah, you have the 35, the 25.
The figure, Senator Ralph, that they mentioned is about 73 billion,
No,
more
that-
or less.
Yes, that's
This
the new money. Yeah, the total is 110. Okay? The new money is 35 kasi meron ng 35 ngayon eh.
Mayroon ngayong 32.
I'm just
so-
rounding it off. I'm rounding it off, yeah. Okay? Now, so kulang ang naka-budget for next year. In fact, for the next 10 years, our computation gross is about 1.9 trillion. Eh. Now, having said that, in 2019, how much is the budget? 32?
Yeah.
For the armed region? 32?
32.2.
Okay, so medyo kukulangin. Yung 5%, magkano na eh? Nasa 65 siguro eh.
60.
Thereabouts.
60.
More or less, ha? And then you have the Special Development Fund, 5 billion ba? Di ba? Okay? And all the others,
Retirement pay.
yung mga, yan, hindi ko nga binilang yan eh. Hindi pa
7.2
maliwanag.
billion,
Yeah,
according
something
to-
like that. Okay? Now, so, now that the President signed it, we probably will have to amend part of the budget to include the Bangsamoro mandates. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yes. Okay. Okay, so we will do that. Okay? Now, the budget as presented is roughly 3.7 trillion. What was the budget in 2018? Roughly about 3.7 trillion, right?
No, but the cash equivalent
No,
of
I
that
understand.
is
I
7.3.
Yeah. I'm talking about the authority that government allows you to spend. Okay? Last year, the budget that we passed is 3.7.
Correct. Obligation
Today-
budget.
Yes. Today, it's also 3.7. It's a flat
Cash budget. Cash-based budget.
Yes. In effect, it's a flat budget.
You know, pairing apples and oranges.
Yeah, that's
here.
fine. Yeah, I
Okay.
understand. I'm saying authority to spend. That's what the budget is. Okay? Now, don't mistake me, Secretary, that I'm against the cash base. I am in favor. I understand where you're coming from. From the point of view of the DBM2, and the reason why I'm saying this is in your favor, that I support. One is, you are implementing the current year's budget, at the same time implementing the previous year's budget, continuing appropriations, and preparing for the next year's budget. Is that correct? Okay? So what you want basically in a cash-based budget, as far as management and public administration is concerned, is ma-minimize itong continuing appropriations. Is that correct? Yes, and I support that. Second, you want the departments to be more effective and efficient in their planning and programming. That's the purpose, right? Okay? Now, I don't expect lang nga na mazizero mo yung continuing appropriations. The idea is to minimize it. But I don't think it will be possible na zero yung continuing appropriations. Because there could be projects, because of the weather, mag-spill over talaga. May accounts payable ka pa rin. Delayed yung implementation, being a little more careful than being too careless. Right? Okay? Now, and with that, I do support. Okay. Now, based on our, and finally, so based on our, just getting back to that issue, Secretary Dominguez, on the ERA. So we have no plans of increasing the allotments to LGUs between now until, by and large, 2022.
We didn't say that. We just said we're seeking clarification.
Yeah, with the Supreme Court, yeah.
Yes.
But it would appear that the position of government is that they decide in a manner that delays the implementation.
Well, as we explained earlier,
Yes, yes.
we have actually the option.
Yeah,
Ben, why don't you explain? You were the one who...
yeah.
Yes, well, the local government code allows the president to reduce the ERA to up to 30% in the event of an unmanageable public sector
Yeah,
deficit.
when I hear these issues kasi of that issue, okay, it's like, and that's the problem naman why there are those who want federalism. Because we don't want to give what's due to the local government. As far as my perspective is concerned, from where I sit, from what I'm seeing, okay, and of course there's this issue of federalism and local autonomy, decentralization. I understand where you're coming from. You want more resources for build. Okay? I understand that. Okay? But then at the same time, matagal nang pinaglaban ng local government units to. Tension between national and local government. I mean, look at it today, if you have tensions in the three branches of government, legislative, executive, judiciary, you also have a tension between the national and the local government. God forbid we go federalism. And there's tension between national and regional, regional and local, regional among regional. God forbid. Now, having said that, yeah, and within the region, right? Region and local, like I said. Now, so going back to the issue of the local government, why not just implement the decision of the Supreme Court? Yes. And I'm not even talking about federalism. Decentralization, local autonomy.
No, but when you implement...
Incidentally, wag na rin natin tawagin na trabaho yung train 2. Pangit pakinggan yung trabaho eh. Kasi I could put two words together, it would be trabaho. Train baho. Trabaho.
But when you implement the Mandanas ruling, there's really the risk that there will be unmanageable.
That is a lot more manageable. And, you know, I can see so many items in the budget that you can still cut to protect taxpayers' money. Oh, let's take a look at the MOE. Financial assistance and subsidies already at 1 trillion. Konti lang naman nakakaintindi ng budget. But financial assistance
No,
and
but
subsidies
that will
already 1 trillion.
involve irrigation, and that will involve health.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand the details of
Okay.
this. But there's a lot more here. Okay. Now, the budget is 3.7 trillion. So it's more or less flat, and we already had the discussion on that. Okay. Now, I'm also surprised that in the unprogrammed, there's another roughly 200 billion.
That is because we anticipate many ODA and loans that are coming in that which did not meet the cutoff.
Yes.
Okay, so if it did not meet the cutoff, then it's
Yeah.
placed under unprogrammed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so this unprogrammed is roughly 200 billion. This is on top of the 3.7.
That's correct. If the loan proceeds come in, then we can program them.
Okay. So we're only talking about loan proceeds, but in the past kasi nagagamit din yung program.
If
kahit
there
hindi.
is an excess in revenues, yes.
Yeah, but when we say excess in revenue, it could be one revenue type, right? Not total revenues.
That's the interpretation before.
Yes.
Okay.
What is the interpretation today?
I would be inclined to just interpret the total.
Total. So
Yeah,
we could
that's it.
write that language in the budget. Based on that,
The treasurer is looking at me. Then.
huh?
They
They
like
should write that language.
they like
Okay?
the flexibility where you exceed, for example, Bureau of Customs.
Yes.
So they exceed the collection, then we can program.
Yeah. Yeah, but in the past kasi, it's too loose. One revenue item that exceeds, even if the deficit is bigger, kahit hindi pa nga na-collecta ng Customs at BIR pwede pa rin Di ba? And that's not being careful and judicious with public funds as far as I'm concerned. Parang hindi na cash-based budget na rin yan. That's all I'm saying. So that we're consistent with our positions. Because it's roughly 200 billion here already. Okay? Enough to implement the ERA for local governments. And like I said, your financial assistance in Saudi, that's about $1 trillion already. There are so many items here that in the operating expenses that could also be cut to implement the decision of the Supreme Court. Okay? My fear is that later on, you have an adverse ruling in the Supreme Court and ubus na yung future administration. Kawawa naman kung sakali naging presidente si Sara Duterte. Ubus na yung pera. So that's the point. In closing, I'd like to thank the economic managers. I think by and large, you have done your job. My only issue is with regard to the very high inflation numbers. And I suppose that should be the job of the BSP. The primary responsibility, not total, but that is the job of the BSP. Maybe a final question on that. We already expect several rate increases in the U.S. in the coming months and in the coming years. More or less, that's a given. There's a consensus. What is the plan? Yeah. What is the plan as far as the Philippines is concerned?
Well, Mr. Chairman, before I go into that, let me just clarify that inflation is not really completely driven by taxes, etc.
I understand.
But more by the phenomenal increase in global oil prices. In fact, from last year to today, there was about $25 per barrel increase in terms of global oil prices.
Yes, I'm familiar with that.
Yeah.
And that's why I was saying earlier, what could be done to reduce prices of oil that may not even impact the revenue of government? Ano kaya natin gawin? There are many mandates.
Well, there are many mitigants, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So,
Well, from the perspective of the BSP,
my question is, what is the plan? Hindi na yung paliwanag. Alam ko na yung paliwanag Moving forward, what are we looking at?
well, from the perspective of the BSP, our policy is really to adjust monetary policy rate, that's one, and of course manage domestic liquidity
Yes.
based on our inflation target, that which is also consistent with our target on economic growth.
That's correct. Okay, so, and that means,
Well, that means
how many basis points increase?
that is something
Expectedly?
that the Monetary Board will discuss on Thursday,
On
tomorrow,
Thursday.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Okay. Now, you know, part of it is consistency and predictability, right?
That's right, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
And more or less, we know in the U.S., there seems to be some consensus in the market, and the Fed has already telegraphed to a certain degree what to expect.
Well, the BSP has also provided some kind of a forward guidance
Yes.
that we need to do some tightening on monetary policy.
Yes.
But I think we also have to recognize that unlike other countries in the region, we still have high reserve requirement. And that's a form of tightening, Mr. Chairman.
yes.
We also have in place a lot of macroprudential measures, which have the effect of tightening liquidity in the market.
Yes.
So it's not just a question of adjusting the policy rate.
I understand.
But it has to be complemented by
Correct,
other similar
correct.
measures.
No, because my issue also is that if I got that right, there was a reduction in the bigger the growth, is also inflationary.
Necessarily, Mr. Chairman, because the economy is a growing economy,
Yeah.
and therefore it has to be supported by corresponding adjustment, upward adjustment in domestic liquidity.
Understood.
And so far, money supply based on M3 has slowed down to about 11 or 12%, which is for us consistent with an expanding economy.
Okay. But the point is, you know, the effect of all of this today, and if we are behind the curve, there are repercussions.
Well, we beg to disagree, Mr. Chairman. We are not behind the curve. Our policy changed only in May and June because from January to April, there was no strong evidence of second-run effects. That's one. Two, the momentum of inflation has started actually to slow down
Yeah.
based on month-on-month inflation from January
Understood.
to May. So
Understood.
there's no point at that
Yes.
instance
Yes.
for the
Yes.
BSP
Yes.
to
Yes.
consider
Yes.
tightening
Deputy
monetary
Governor,
policy.
Deputy Governor, I understand all of that. What is the primary mandate of the BSP?
Primary mandate of the BSP, Mr. Chairman, is price stability,
Which means?
which means we need to make sure that from the demand side, prices are stable.
And when we talk about price stability, hindi masyado mataas ang inflation.
That's right, but inflation, Mr. Chairman, is not only driven by
Understood.
monetary policy, but by other non-monetary
I agree.
factors,
Taxes and monetary policy, fiscal and monetary.
including the weather, Mr. Chairman.
Correct, including the weather. Agreed. Now, the point being is that there is an inflation problem.
We don't expect inflation to be a recurring one, Mr. Chairman, because by next year, we expect global oil prices to be more or less stable at these levels. And that means that for 2019, we expect inflation to go back to the 2 to 4% target inflation range.
Okay. So, again, we will take a look at the amendments to the BSP law at the appropriate time because in the meantime, considering that you have a high inflation rates, and if the BSP's primary role is inflation, and then the BSP will ask for additional capital, para naman we will have to take a second look. That is my concern. I think that the BSP should play a better role as far as inflation is targeting and is concerned. That's
We're
all
not
I'm
sure,
trying to say,
Mr.
yes.
Chairman, whether monetary policy can
Yeah.
bear upon the weather, the increase in global oil prices, and even in terms of the decision of many universities
So-
encourages to increase their tuition fee, which is the main reason for the June inflation rate of 5.2%.
Let me ask a question, Secretary Jokno. Considering that we have already higher spending on education, why is it that there's a portion in the inflation basket na tumaas ang education?
It went
Yes.
education, inflation rate in June, the free tuition had not been implemented yet. I mean, just a few of them got the got the free education, free tuition, and then in the what really mattered is July because that's when school opening in many colleges and universities happened, and you can see that in the inflation for education in July, it's negative. What? Minus 11. Minus 11 now. So it has got...
Clarification. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm done with my questions.
Yes,
So
just
thank you
a
very
few
much. to
points.
the
Yes, Senator
government.
Dilat, Minority Leader,
Just a few
recognized.
points follow-up. I relate this to the plan on clarification. The impression that was created by our earlier discussion is that the tariffification of certain basic goods, including meat, including rice, is principally to arrest the inflation. Is that a correct impression, Secretary Pernier?
we want to bring down the price of these basic commodities.
I know. But From the way I understand it from the Secretary, from Deputy Governor Gunigundo, it is more the global oil prices, monetary policies, and a lot of other factors which appears not to have anything to do with the tariffication plan.
Mr. Chairman, all of the above, actually. When it comes to rice tariffication, we expect, if this is going to be implemented in the fourth quarter of 2018, we expect that to reduce inflation by about 0.2 percentage point. And next year, by another 0.6 to 0.8 percentage point.
Okay.
First of all, rice, Mr. Chairman, is about 9.6% of the total consumer basket.
Okay.
And to the extent that we can bring down rice for the following the free importation of rice with 35% tariff, we can expect rice prices to start coming down that way.
Thank you for that clarification. Yes, Sunny.
I just wanted to add something, Mr. Senator. Undersecretary Beltran made a quick analysis on the increase in prices of fish. And we have come to the conclusion, well, the evidence first shows that our fish catch has actually been dropping since 2002. We are discussing now with the Bureau of Fisheries as to what they think is the cause. Is it climate change? Is it overfishing? Is it what other causes there are? In the meantime, we believe that if we increase the supply of fish domestically, that will tend to correct the problem that is really a really basic problem of supply of fish within the Philippine waters. So again, the discussions are ongoing, and the research definitely will be presented to you when it's fine.
The long term is to look at the supply situation insofar as the fish is concerned. Yeah.
Fish prices jumped up 0.5%, 0.6%. So that's a very worrying number.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senator Dulot. I just have before we adjourn for this morning session, suspend. No, the chair would just like to ask some questions with regards to the inflation mitigating measures. So one of which is the unconditional cash transfer. No, probably you said, Carl, it's only designed to somehow soften the shock.
We designed it, yes, as a temporary solution while waiting for the permanent solution, which is the infra, the health, and the social services.
Well, that's good to hear, because I'm quite worried, because I'm not, with the current situation of the conditional cash transfer, with about 4.4 million households, we are already allocating about 88.1 billion every year for the current CCT beneficiaries of the 4Ps program. Now with the UCT, with the unconditional cash transfer, we will allocate additional 37.6 billion for about how many
10 million beneficiaries.
Ang worry ko lang po doon, my only worry is that, my concern is that, as it is right now with the CCT, the DSW is already having problems with 4.4 million beneficiaries. Now we will have additional 10 million, so that is just my apprehension on how it will be implemented. No? Kasi ngayon, yung 4.4 medyo problema na. Now we will have additional 10 million. So you're saying this will only be until 2020?
For the unconditional, yes, 2020. If I may, Mr. Chair, that is a problem of DSWD right now because its mandate has increased significantly to cover all the social transfer program. So
it's really difficult, we understand, because this is cash.
Yes.
So ang worry ko lang, that right now with 4.4 million beneficiaries is already a problem. Now we will add another 10 million because of UCT until 2020.
We have added temporarily because of the temporary inflation that is due to trade, which is not very high.
Okay, at least we know already that until the UCT is until 2020.
Yes.
But the CCT, I would like to ask probably later on with the DSWD what the exit plan is, no? Because it's good that Secretary Dominguez is here, Secretary Diokno. I'm one of those who really support the Build program, and because I believe that the massive infrastructure will really will cause rapid development, no, for us. And yun lang my apprehension yung sa CCT po, because I really am not, even during the past administration, I was really against it because it's I would rather have inclusive growth brought about by massive infrastructure and rapid economic development. So, are there any updates, Yusek Carl? Probably Sec Dominguez later would update us on the Build programs.
Update? Yes.
Yes, we have an update which we can submit to the committee.
Please do so, no? Because
Yes.
Are you, Mr. Chair, referring to the update on the UCT?
the Build.
Build. Okay.
Yeah,
sorry,
because that
sorry.
is one of the things that we are expecting, that at least the inflation would somehow be softened, no, with the implementation of the projects, no, because of course, the multiplier effect, the immediate economic impact brought about by this construction. So what I hope that I will be given, please submit the updates on the Build.
Now.
Yes, sir.
I can give it to you now.
Probably, Secretary Pernia, just the big ticket items.
Okay.
And how many?
The big ticket items,
Yes.
75 flagship projects. 20 projects are, 40 projects are under implementation now. 40 projects under implementation. About 20 are under development in terms of feasibility studies and other preparatory works on projects, and then 7 are being reconsidered. So we expect about
the
32.
I'm quite interested, Secretary Pernia, with the railways. No, there was already groundbreaking held for the PNR North Line. North Line.
That's correct.
The Manila to Tutuban and Tutuban to Clark and Malolos and Clark.
That's correct.
So how about the South Line?
The South hasn't broken ground yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
When is the expected?
I think you're talking about the commuter line to the south.
To the south, yes.
That's next year yet, Your Honor.
That is the Manila to Tutuban to Calamba, I think, no? Calamba.
To Calamba, yes.
Initial, and
That's
then
correct.
all the way to Bicol.
To Bicol,
Yeah.
yes. And well, the other thing that I can mention is we expect 32 projects of the 75 to be completed by the end of the term of this administration.
Yeah, but rest assured, I'm glad that economic managers here are of our support, because I do believe that this can become the backbone of our economy.
Sure.
If the railways are in place, it will solve so many problems, not only congestion. I think it will help in decentralizing Manila. Baka hindi na kailangan ng federalism.
That's correct.
They spread out the development in the countryside.
Most of the projects will be in the regions.
Yes, just to give you also an example, I was in San Jose, Del Monte the other day, where the MRT-7 would end. The mayor was telling me that the prices of the land already has shot up by more than 4 or 5 times. So just imagine, if all of this infrastructure development are in place, the railway system, Bulacan, Pampanga, Tarlac, all of this, we will create new growth development areas. And that will that means jobs and opportunities. That's why I'm very, very supportive of this. That's why I'm particular with the timeline. And I'm sure, Secretary Dominguez, that this will really also mitigate also the inflationary effect, no, because of yung immediate nito, yung multiplier effect, no, because of the brought about by the construction. So, what are the costs na lang of the delays? Are there any problems? Right of way problem.
Right of way, resettlement problems, yeah. And by the way,
sana emergency power could have helped, no? But anyway.
In addition to the 75 flagship projects, we have in the public investment program, another 4,900 projects that are spread all over the country.
Likewise,
Small
Mindanao
projects.
Railway, Secretary Dominguez, Secretary na, no? Is also will be
That's also
implemented soon?
Soon not to be implemented. It's already under implementation in terms of preparation.
That's great.
But in
that's
terms
great.
of construction, it will.
No, because after the signing of the BOL, I think the economic development should follow already in Mindanao.
That's correct.
That's great. Anyway, be rest assured of my support. I'm the only one who really believes in the railways, but I believe it will really cause our economic take-off. No? Anyway, I have one more point. I have two more points before we will adjourn probably before 1. It's almost done. But before that, about quarter. Anyway, just like to ask, wala ba si Commissioner La Peña?
He was here.
We're also pressuring them. No? Ano namang any updates already?
Yes, sir.
May nakaso na ba tayo sa anti-agricultural smuggling?
Yes, sir. We have filed around 8 cases already, and unluckily still pending with DOJ for preliminary.
So it's with DOJ already?
Yes, sir. And
we already filed
yes,
cases of
since last year.
agri-smuggling to,
Yes, sir.
Ano, iba-iba, bigas,
Yes, sir.
sibuyas.
Iba-iba.
No, because recently, I've been, of course, one of our jobs is to go around. Meron pa rin hong sibuyas, meron pa rin hong, may bigas pa rin konti, meron pa rin bawang. On the market, no? Na siyempre, that causes the prices of palay to drop pag may smuggling. So, are these big, talagang, large scale ito?
Meron, sir.
Okay.
Probably kung may makasuhan na sana, sir, na with no bail recommended, baka makatulong sa...
I hope that this will be, because this will become a deterrent. No? I
Yes,
hope
sir,
that
yes.
this will become a deterrent because I also received information that in Cagayan de Oro, please verify, confirm or not, there are 100 fire containers that was released without undergoing customs release procedures.
Yes, sir.
Nangyari ba ito?
Yes, sir. In fact, it's under investigation, and in fact, all the personnel and officials in Cagayan de Oro have been replaced already, sir.
Well, that's good to hear. Ang karamihan daw kasi dumadaan, meron kang yellow lane, di ba? May green lane, yellow lane, and red lane. So, most of this sa yellow lane ba, karamihan, o yung sa green lane na sinasabi?
Actually, sa yellow lane, in fact, some are red. Some are red. That's why we are having a full-blown investigation on this, Mr. Chairman.
How long, ilang percentage ba yung natin, yung dumadaan sa red lane? Kasi I understand because of our limitation of our equipment, dati 18-20% lang ang dumadaan ng red lane. So, lahat green or yellow lane. Tama
Yes,
ba?
actually, as of now, Mr. Chairman, the Commissioner has suspended the green lane.
So, yellow ngayon?
Yellow lang at saka red.
Okay.
So, in fact, most of the agricultural products now are classified as under red classification.
We'll just wait for your report regarding this, no?
Yes,
This matter, because it has been past 2 years, no? And
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
I have to tell you that as an author, of course, I'm quite disappointed that nobody has been charged yet.
Yes.
So it's in the ball. So
Yes.
the ball is in the hands of the DOJ and NBI.
Yes, sir.
Before we end, I'd just like to para ayoko na ma-shock yung
Just one more point.
Yes, Secretary Dominguez.
With regards to the smuggling, I have asked the customs to really analyze which products have a high price domestically and a low price outside. And we have identified rice, sugar, fish. So we are closely watching all these products because those are the products naturally that will be smuggled in. Oh, including cigarettes also. Garlic. So they are really focusing on that, and I think they're doing a good job. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Secretary Dominguez. Before we suspend this session, anyway, the President has already mentioned during the SONA yung sa Universal Healthcare Program. I'm wearing my other hat. We will be able to pass this by September. Ayoko namang ma-shock po kayo with what we would need, but I'd like to give you siguro an idea on the requirements, no? Pwede ba ilagay na? Can you flash it on the screen? Yan po, naku, baka magulat si Secretary. Yung first muna, yung the other slide. Yung isa po. Ito po yung the current that we are getting, Sec. From DOH, we allocate 70 billion, then PhilHealth, the subsidy is about 67 billion. And then the full requirement will be about 135 for DOH, that's kasama na po yung improvements of the health facilities. Sa PhilHealth naman, because we want 100% coverage as promised by the President, from the current 80 to 90%. So the full requirement would be 305 billion. Wag naman, pero wag ko kang magulat, no? But yung possible source of income is sa next. Yung PCSO has already agreed that their medical assistance, they will already give it to the universal healthcare. The PAGCOR also, the medical assistance part, and then the current tobacco tax, and yung pong the funding alcohol tax, what Secretary Dominguez has already said that we possible, this will be the possible sources of fund. So we'll just give you the, hindi pa naman ito, we're still implementing on the bill, but we'll probably need about 40 to 50 billion. So it's about the same thing as the Free Higher Education Act. So baka ito po yung kailanganin natin. So, but the rationale here to the economic managers is that we will now pool the resources. No? Kasi yung PAGCOR, PCSO, DOH, we will now have a strategic, no, that at least everybody can have, can benefit. Kasi ngayon may overlapping eh. They get from PCSO, they get from so we will now already pool the funds. So I think we will need about 48 million at least. Just to give an example. Sige, you say, Carl.
Actually, Senator, this is a very good update. In fact, we have submitted the alcohol, and we're happy to support the tobacco to help fund. So I'd be happy to discuss with you the funding options.
Yes, that's good. That's good to hear, and I'm very happy. And thank you. I'd like to thank Secretary Dominguez, Secretary Jokno, Secretary Pernia, and as well as all the connect managers for the support. And we will be rest assured that we will work with you on this once we're able to pass by September. Okay? So since there are no more matters to discuss, again, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. This hearing is now suspended. Thank you.